Briefing. I wanted to kick off today by talking about our upcoming trip to Washington, D.C. The council and I, or the majority of the council, and I will be attending next week. It's from March 8th to the 11th. We will be at the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference. So while we're there getting updated on best practices for public policy and working along our peer groups, learning about what's working in their cities and making sure we bring some of that back. We will also be active on the Hill, meeting with our legislative delegation and having conversations about Amtrak, meeting with Senator Moran, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Housing and more, so that we could be better suited to serve our community, both at the state level, the city level, and at the national level. So I look forward to representing Wichita in our nation's capital and promoting this legislative agenda that we have. All right, so I want to talk about tax prep at centers. Speaking of federal initiatives, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and we're in the middle of everyone's favorite season, and that's tax season. And with that, I do want to give a shout out to Megan, who wrote that great line that I promised I was going to. After I read it, I'm totally going to perform that line because everyone thinks we're talking about spring. But it is tax season, and we do want to provide our citizens with opportunities to get their taxes done. We have neighborhood resource centers are once again offering free tax preparation. The service is available at all three centers, and that's Atwater, Evergreen, and Colvin. And you can schedule a tax appointment by calling your nearest center. So if you're one of those people who might not do your taxes by yourself on an app, make sure you reach out to one of our centers so that they can help you. And this, of course, is free. So you can find those numbers to call at our website at wichita.gov. So in the past, returns filed at these centers put more than $1 million back into the Wichita economy, which means it's putting more than $1 million back into the pockets of our citizens. So please take advantage of that free service. So lastly, I want to talk about WAMPO, which is like to invite our friends up from WCU's Public Policy Management Center, or called WAMPO. They have exciting new projects aimed at shaping the future of transportation in Wichita. So here with us is Troy Tabor of WAMPO's Transportation Policy Board. Troy, would you like to come up and tell us about all the great stuff you're doing?
I'd be happy to, yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Whipple. Well, my name is Troy Tabor. I'm on the Andover City Council. I'm also on a regional transportation board called WAMPO, the Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, but I'll never say that again. I'm here to ask you for your ideas and to help us create a long-term transportation plan in our region. It sounds boring, I know, but our quality of life and our ability to prosper here and in the region depends on a transportation system that evolves with the times and takes advantage of the latest technology and the technology of the future. There are many types of innovations in transportation, new road materials, smarter stoplights, different ways of striping roads, self-driving cars, flying cars, maybe a teleporter eventually, but then all this would be obsolete. Well, but until then, we're putting together a 20-year plan, and we need your help. What types of transportation innovations do you see yourself and our region needing over the next 20 years? That's really what we're trying to get to. We have a short survey online. It ends on March 27th, which isn't a lot of time, so we ask everyone to be a part of that, to go online, go to Twitter and Facebook, search for WAMPO KS, WAMPO KS, to find links to that, as well as our website, wampo.org. This works best if everyone participates. We really need everyone in the entire region, all 550,000 of you. That probably won't happen, but a majority of you, or a lot of you, would make this something that we can use to build our future, your future, in transportation in this region. So we really need you. All the feedback will be analyzed by the Wichita State University Public Policy and Management Center. We're working closely with them, and they've done a great job for our city in the past, and we look forward to seeing how this survey turns out. I thank you for your time today. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. No questions. Oh, we have a question?
I do have a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
You gotta wait for the mic.
Oh, okay. Chad, would you like to join me, just in case I...
Do you guys have any ideas, or where would you like to go? What do you see? Maybe a metro service, some sort of fast service to go from Derby to Andover to Wichita, or...
So on the WAMPO board is an organization that is really, it's 23 entities in our region, different cities, Butler County, Sedgwick County, Wichita, obviously, Andover, up to Cheney and et cetera. And so over the years, we've talked about many different types of transportation that usually it's what's current, what's coming up, what is being talked about in the world. So we've talked about things like putting large parking lots in the outskirts of Wichita, for example, for some of the smaller cities to the people that are going to work in Wichita to drive in and park. And then from there, you could take Wichita Transit in. That's just an example of things we've talked about. And by the way, things that I'm saying we've talked about. We're not implementing any of it. It's really just a large group of people that are coming up with ideas. So we've talked about that. We've talked about changing, and we have changed Wichita Transit, the way that the bus routes run within Wichita. They did a pretty large study on it to make it so it effectively reached more people, and the drive times and ride times went down. There's other services that will go out individually and pick up people that are disabled in some way that's been implemented and talked about and implemented. But Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, we are not Wichita per se, in that we don't have the funding that Wichita has to implement those types of projects. What WAMPO has is we have $12 million a year that comes in through the Department of Transportation. And we are very specific in looking at regional needs, regional roads, for example, putting out the parking lot is a regional thing. So we focus on the region. We haven't talked necessarily about Amtrak or some kind of a train service coming through. That is a very expensive thing. And as I said, we take care of $12 million a year. So that's not, to put it in perspective, to build a road is $1.2 to $1.4 million per lane mile. So a 4-lane road, $4.8 million per mile. And we only get $12 million a year to play with. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, and just a follow-up question. If the funding is going to be an issue, the ideas would have to be kind of realistic to the budget, or is there any...
So you're talking about the survey, how people would answer the survey? I think we want both. I think we absolutely want people to pie in the sky, what is it that you could imagine, because there's things we haven't thought about, and that helps generate a conversation that's very important to have. So yes, we need that as well, because there's things in there that we might be able to do. We also need the things where what's called a road diet, for example, where 4-lane roads have now shrunk to 3-lane roads with a center turn lane, and it dramatically increased the traffic flow, for example. Those types of things, people might have seen them that take the survey and say, hey, I live in this area, and maybe you should come check that out, that kind of thing. So it's really both. It's really both.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, I'll leave it up to Dr. Whipple here to talk about flying cars, right?
Thank you. Yes. I want to just stress Troy's point that if you are someone who wants to vote for flying cars or for, I think, teleporting was also on the list, make sure you check out their survey by Googling WAMPO and make sure those taxpayer dollars get put to use. So thanks, Troy, for being here. All right, so lastly, I'm going to talk about the State of the City that's coming up. It's just another reminder to mark your calendars for the State of the City on March 26th. This will be held at Century 2. So not here at City Hall, at Century 2 in the Mary Jane Teal Theater. So we're going to start at 4:30, and 4:30 is actually when there'll be food trucks and other fun events happening out front. We want this to have kind of a block party feel to it. So come early, come after work, and then a presentation of the State of the City is actually at 6 p.m. So this should be a really good celebration of the city. When we were discussing bringing back an actual event, those discussions were, I don't want this to be about me or the council or the position of mayor, but more about what Wichita is doing. So what Wichita did in the past year that we're really proud of, what Wichita is, and by that I mean we're bringing in, we have performances by different groups throughout the city that's going to really show off Wichita's diversity, Wichita as a city. And then my job is to discuss what the future is. What is the upcoming year? What does that look like? And I just do want to give a plug to about our town hall meetings that we're hosting, where we had one last week. It was actually very successful. It was packed. And really, the format for that one was a SWOT analysis, right? Like straight out of a page of an MBA textbook. We're going to talk about the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of Wichita, and get people's feedback. My goal is to get that feedback so I can take that feedback, turn it into a vision, but it's not my vision, it's the vision of the people who we work for. And then after the state of the city is when we're going to really jump into budgets. So a budget is where you turn a vision into action, right? Because we can actually budget anything, but we want to instead make sure that we're budgeting the priorities that people are communicating to us. So that's the overarching theme of this. So I will say that not only please come out on March 26th to our State of the City, because it's going to be a lot of fun. It's not going to be stuffy. It's going to be a really great event showing off our city. But also, if you get a chance, come to one of our town halls and come communicate, what you think is important to our city. And also, just to kind of dovetail off of last week's press conference, because there might be people out here who don't watch these every single week. We are sending out surveys, and we actually have links to those surveys online. Please fill those out as well. We take that in consideration when it comes to trying to make sure that we're doing right as far as the priorities of what our citizens are communicating with us. With that, I will open up to questions. Gentleman in a suit.
I do have a question.
Oh, or this guy. Yes.
Larry Beal with KTV. We are about a month out from the opening of the baseball stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Can you address where we're at with the parking? What's being done? How's that going to be handled?
So I don't have a lot more details for that. I haven't been briefed recently on any of the more newer, I guess, plans for that. But I do know that parking is a concern. It's something that's ongoing that we have been working on to make sure that not only are we prepared for people coming downtown for the baseball stadium, but also we're not impinging on other local businesses. My understanding is that we will have, there are certain neighborhoods that right now, they won't be blocked off for people to park as long as it's not an issue. But there will also be areas in front of stores, like other areas that are in front of economic, right. Let me say that sentence again. There are parts of our community in that area where we don't want to block off traffic. Those areas we will be not having people park if they're going to the baseball stadium. They could park there if they're going to, be going to the restaurants or the stores in that area. So there is some policy that we're putting in place to make sure that there's parking, and that parking doesn't interfere with the local everyday businesses that complement that area. And some of that might actually bleed into the neighborhoods at this point. As long as that doesn't cause any disturbance, that's going to continue to be the plan. But it's ongoing as well, as we want to learn from the opening day. We want to learn from this, and then I'll keep updating our parking situation so it serves people better.
Can you tell us whether or not there's going to be transit involved to designated parking lots where people can hop buses and to get to the ballpark? Do you know if that's in place?
So I do know those conversations are in place right now. I just don't have the details on it. But I do think that the queue line is going to be active in that. I do think that shuttles are something we're looking into. As those details have fallen into place, and I got to be careful too, because some of the meetings that I have and I'm involved with, we're having these global conversations, and but we haven't said like this is the best route or that's the best route. Just like any good policy, you start off in the idea phase. So I don't want to say and this is what's happening. If that winds up changing because we get a better I get a better policy a couple days from now. So my understanding is that's going to be a possibility. As we get closer to opening day, I'll be able to report on that. I do want to just stress that parking is a serious issue that we are taking into consideration. Our goal is to provide parking for the stadium. Also keep in mind the businesses in the area and their needs, because they also have their customers coming, and the surrounding neighborhoods, to make sure that it's not a burden on them. You, sir. About parking, really? You guys don't want to talk about tax season? Hey, I got a whole thing here about we're going to DC. It's going to be amazing. All right. Well, if I knew it was going to be about parking, I would have definitely prepared a couple pages on that. My last meeting on parking was Monday with the city manager, and that's why it's Thursday. If you guys know anything about local government, stuff you talk about on Monday can be very different by the time it gets to Thursday. So, come in next. Actually, I think it might be in DC next week. Next time we have this, I'll make sure to update you guys on the parking situation for sure.
We can always connect them with transit too.
We could connect them with transit. We could do that. I could delegate this with someone who knows what they're doing. Yeah, who's an expert on it. Yes, ma'am.
Access question.
Oh, good.
Can you talk more about the program? Who is this for? Are there any requirements to be able to qualify for the free help?
My understanding, and Megan, you can nod your head yes or no if I'm wrong on this. My understanding is it's part of our community outreach in the neighborhood centers, and I want to make sure I got them right. It's Atwater, Evergreen, and Colvin. They will, my understanding is anyone who can walk in and get their taxes done. I would say that it's mostly for families and individuals. If you are someone who has a large corporation and you normally pay $1,000 a year for an accountant to go over your complex file, this service probably isn't right for you. But if you're someone who's in our community and working and just needs to file their taxes, give them a call, and I'm sure that they'll schedule you to come in. Anything else? It seems like it warmed up. You guys are out of questions. Street one, though, threw me off. All right, cool. All right, guys, is there anything else I can do for you? Let me know. And also, thanks for the questions on streets. I'll make sure to have more info on you next time we have one of these. But in the meantime, feel free to talk to the right department. We good? All right, looking at Megan, I think we're good. Thank you, guys.